Next item of business, Councilman Fowler and Councilman McManus, KC Trails Plan update.
You want me to start?
Yeah, you go ahead.
All right.
So I started the last one.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I'm honored to introduce this presentation with Councilman Fowler. You know, I think it's kind of fitting that we're both on this because we come from very different parts of the city. He from north, me from the south. But trails, the thing about trails is it connects all of us no matter where we are. We've got an outstanding trail system in the city, and I think it's one of our real asset that we can showcase, and we've got some real activists and advocates for the trail system in our city. But I think we also have to recognize that we've got a long way to go, and particularly a lot of opportunities that are coming up now that we saw in the news, the Katy Trail connectivity that's connecting us with a wider trail system to the east. But I am honored and privileged to introduce, I guess, our staff members who are here today and appreciate the effort they're doing and being a champion for trails in our city. So thanks.
Thank you, Councilman McManus. Anything, Councilman Fowler?
I would just say that when I was first campaigning, I was talking about trails with some real estate developers, and they pointed out to me that trails are the most utilized parks amenity that there is. And the trail near me, Line Creek Trail, bears witness to that. It's used all the time. They're of immense value in enhancing the value of real estate and real estate development and fostering real estate development. So very important to our continued economic development policies.
Well, first off, I'd like to thank Councilman McManus and Councilman Fowler for that opportunity to kind of give you guys an update on the business session. I'd also like to thank Councilman Fowler for giving us that act to follow. That's greatly appreciated. So,
Voice.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of the committee, members of the City Council. My name is Wes Minder. I'm an engineer in the City Manager's office, and with me is Richard Allen, who's our park planner and a registered landscape architect. Wanted to kind of give you guys just a couple things. You've got at your desk a copy of the presentation. You also have at the back 2 maps that kind of show the whole citywide plan and then some of the priorities. And then I left copies of the Trails plan. I left one with Councilman McManus, one with Councilman Fowler, and one with Mr. Mayor there in case you guys want to look at the plan or have any questions for that.
Thank you.
Today, just kind of want to give you guys some background on the TrailsKC plan, some projects we were planning to do as far as the plan when we started it in 2008, what we've completed, and kind of some of our next steps as far as moving forward and updating the plan. Just to kind of give you some update, the Mid-America Council, Regional Council adopted the Metro-wide Metro Green Plan in 1991. It was followed up by a Northland Trails Vision Plan from 1998 to 2000. And we have, during that time, we had some disjointed corridors such as Trolley Track, the Riverfront Heritage Trail, Indian Creek, Brush Creek, and the 64th Street Trail that got completed. In 2006, PIAC funded a citywide trails plan in the planning process. That project was led by City Planning and Development. That was kind of the first citywide effort, and the great thing about city planning and their efforts in leading that is it brought water services, public works, the Parks Department all in a room. It helped us build some relationships with each other, working relationships that were really valuable. Richard and I kind of had a handshake agreement that I would kind of take care of stuff up north when I was in public works, and he would take care of stuff down south, and then we would dibble and dabble as necessary across the river every so often, depending on what the project was. And one of the things that was really helpful about that is we were able to start sharing technical information with each other. We were able to kind of standardize our trail plans and requirements, and so contractors knew what to expect, and it kind of gives us some more efficiencies in our prices of our trails. One of the things, there's not really a lot of, what do trails have to do with property values? There's really not much data on that, but I did pull up kind of this random summary of some different studies around the United States. And again, like most studies, there's really not enough conclusive evidence one way or the other. You can find a study that supports your point, you can find a study that doesn't, but it seemed to be generally that these were a good thing. And we do have one test case of that. On this next slide, I'm showing a picture of the Shoal Creek Trail, which connected Kansas City into Happy Rock Park in Gladstone. It was a joint project with Gladstone. It was in the Parkway Village subdivision, which was a subdivision that had had some problems. The developer went under. And as you can see in the picture, having the trail through the greenway was not a hindrance, as all those houses sold. In fact, most of the houses, as you can see in the aerial, that backed against the trail were the first ones to sell and be developed as the economy accrued. One of the metrics when we were developing the trail was what was our goal. And so kind of the goal that we established at the time is that folks be within 15 minutes or 2 miles of the trail system through the trail networks. And so I asked the question, is that our goal? How does this integrate with our on-street connections? Do we need to add some other connections to get people easier access to the trail? And kind of as our area plans have been updated by city planning and development, we need to include some neighborhood connections and some key points. But that map shows kind of what that metric looks like, that most of the city is within reasonable walking or biking distance. Here's kind of a map that's kind of zoomed into the planned network in the south part of the city. The major corridors obviously are Indian Creek, Blue River, Trolley Track, the Katy Trail connection that Jackson County will be taking the lead on, the Little Blue Trace Trail. We looked at multiple types of trails. We actually we included some equestrian trails in the plan, because we do, since we are large enough, that we do have some folks that own property that have horses, and that the equestrian community is a very organized community, and they do a lot of volunteer efforts. So we wanted to preserve some corridors where we could, so that they could develop some facilities so they would not have to drive to Smithville Lake or far-flung places. They could stay in the city. North of the river, our big kind of goals going north-south are the Line and Second Creek Trail, the Hodge Park to Smithville Trail, and the 152 Trail, and then the Choteau Parkway Trail, which connects Lakewood Greenway and Penguin Park to the downtown. Now that I've kind of blown through that real quick, let's kind of go over the map. Here is what the priority projects were that we adopted in 2008. And as you can see, our goal on this was to kind of make some of those missing gaps and connections so that our trails actually went somewhere. And not just from a recreational standpoint, but from a transportation standpoint. Properly designed recreational trail in the right corridor is a very viable transportation corridor, because it's a lot faster and easier, because if you're riding to a facility or an employment center, you're not having to worry about cars or stoplights. And so it's kind of an integrated approach to it all. But our big kind of gaps were that Indian Creek to Blue River connection, the Trolley Track connector, Blue River Trail, and then the three trails, heritage trails that go through the former Bannister Mall / Cerner site. Central part of the city, we were wanting to connect folks by continuing to work on the Blue River, finish the gaps in Brush Creek, extend the connections to the Brush Creek Trail along Cleaver Boulevard, and then the big one was the Riverfront Heritage Trail, which was very key for eliminating a lot of bottlenecks. And then up north, we're trying to get our north-south connections, and then our connections to Parkville and Riverside and other communities in the area. And so that is what, when we adopted the plan, those were the projects that we focused our resources and staff on. So we didn't get all that done, but we did make a pretty good dent in the whole system. So what I did here was pulled up a map of the trails plan, and then I highlighted in purple the projects that we had completed. And so as you can see, we did a lot of stuff there as far as finishing some connections, but we still have some missing gaps. Some of the sample projects there, the Santa Fe Trail at 93rd Street, that's part of the connection from the west side of US 71 over to the new Cerner complex, and so that provides access for folks that have no other way to get through there. And I'll go ahead and let Richard talk about Indian Creek and Blue River.
Two projects one is the trolley track connector, and then what that does is it provides the first link of the connection from the Indian Creek to the Blue River Trail to the trolley track. And just kind of want to give you I was out there, guy came up on a bike, and he says, what is this trail? And I said, this trail is going to connect to the trolley track trail. And he says, I'm from Kansas, and you guys are doing a lot of neat stuff, and they're not doing it out there. So I think that's a testament of what we're trying to do. These trails are connecting states. Indian Creek connects Kansas to Missouri. There's 5 cities that are connected: Kansas City, Leawood, Lenexa, Overland Park, and Olathe. And then when you talk about other opportunities, we have the opportunity to connect to Grandview and Raytown. So the trolley track trail connects Indian Creek, and eventually somebody can go from Kansas out in Olathe all the way down to the plaza. And then the other one is the Minor Park Trail that's on the bottom of this slide. And what that does is you can go from State Line all the way out to Minor Park. The goal is to go all the way to Martin City, where there's a lot of good energy to get to 135th Street. And then also along Martha Truman Road will be a connection over to Grandview. And so we got great partnerships with these other cities and then counties too. So
one other thing to note when I was out taking some pictures, that Minor Park connection that Parks and Rec had done down along Red Bridge Road has really opened up that greenway and made it really inviting in a place that people can actually go and spend some time in, and has really opened it up and made it a lot more appealing than what it looked like to begin with. One thing too about these, we have a lot of good housing stock, first generation suburban housing stock, good starter homes. We are trying to get these corridors in places where somebody that's right out of school, medical school, or they're just starting out and they're working at Cerner and they don't really have much money or much to begin with. We're hoping that by having these connections to those employment centers, rather than buying an affordable duplex out in Green Valley or Raymore, they would buy our first generation suburban housing stock, rehabilitate it, and then also be able to use the facilities to get to the employment centers, because as we all know, when you get out of college, you have no money, you have no car, and you have no place to live. So we're hoping to that this is part of the attraction of attracting and keeping our neighborhoods fully employed and fully occupied. Finished part, central part of the city. The big one on this map, there's 2 big ones. There's the connections along Blue River and Van Brunt. There's also the Riverfront Heritage Trail. There are a lot of folks who, there was a lot of barriers between railroads and bridges and interstates. And so completing the Riverfront Heritage Trail, you can now go from the West Bottoms to the East Bottoms using the Riverfront Heritage Trail. With the development and redevelopment and repopulation of downtown, this is a great amenity for folks that live in those areas to get down to the riverfront. As I was down there yesterday in 20-degree weather, there were at least 6 people that in the 2 minutes that I was out there getting pictures that were down using the system over their lunch hour. And so that's kind of the great thing about the River Heritage Trail. If you've never been down there, it's got that view of the river that we're really not able to see when you're driving by on the highway at 70 miles an hour. And so, Richard, do you want to?
I'll talk about Cleaver Trail a little bit. It's a little bit over 2 miles long, and what's neat about this is it connects Brush Creek to the residents along Cleaver 2, and then also we have the VA hospital, and the VA hospital has a lot of energy. I think there's a lot of people working there, and then there's a lot of patients there, and gives them an opportunity to travel to work or to travel to office visits. So, and then also. Cleaver 2 was funded all by Council District 3 in district dollars, and so.
And again, as I was out there taking pictures, there were people actually using it because there were no sidewalks along Cleaver Boulevard. So we have folks that now can safely get access to transit and where they need to go in the area. Up north, there's a lot of purple up here on the Platte County side, and part of that is because we've gone through and we've worked and we've built some partnerships with Platte County and Riverside, and also too with Gladstone and some of our other neighboring communities that have helped us get some of these projects done. The big problem or the big challenge in getting these projects done is funding. And we have been very successful at securing $500,000 federal transportation alternative grants specifically for non-motorized transportation. And so the federal highway bill has set asides for that sort of project. And so while folks may sit there and say these are kind of foo-foo or unnecessary projects, there is federal money available. And if there is federal money available, I would rather have the federal money be spent in Kansas City and not in Lee Summit or Blue Springs. And so we've got a pretty good connection with getting the Line and Second Creek Trail done. We've also got the Choteau Parkway Trail, which is, again, along Choteau, but at least it provides a connection up to, it's not shown on the map because it's under construction, but we will have a connection up to Lakewood Greenway or Penguin Park. And so you've got our two largest employment centers north of the river in Cerner and North Kansas City Hospital. And this, again, is that part of that whole economic development package of getting folks into our older housing stock and then providing access to those employment centers. Just some pictures here. The Shoal Creek Trail at Maplewoods Parkway, the reason why I included that one is that was a big pile of rock and dirt and dumping, and was a chronic eyesore. And we were able to use that rock on site as riprap for our culverts and our bridges. And so it saved us a lot of money in hauling in rock, and plus it created a better gateway and cleaned up an area that was kind of chronic. The Route 152 trail, as you can see, it's not exactly scenic. It is along Route 152, but it does provide those transportation connections because we really have no good way to get east-west north of the river because it's mostly built out. And then Lion Creek Trail at Blackbird Drive, that's been a huge win for us. Provides a lot of connections, opens up about 100 acres of park ground, and has been one of the things that leads to the next slide. Citizen satisfaction in 2008 was not very good. Folks were not happy with the facilities they had. And so since then, we've got a chart. And one of the things from a numbers perspective that kind of skews it is we did redistrict in 2010, but there's a couple trends that stick out. As you can see in the second council district, which includes the Lion Creek Trail and the 152 Trail, our numbers have almost doubled in citizen satisfaction. And that's shown in the orange line. And then in the green line, the 6th district, with all the work that the 3 Trails CID has done and the Blue River and Indian Creek, those scores have gone up. We've seen some increase in the 1st with, again, those facilities we've done. One thing that we don't really see, we haven't seen much change in the 3rd and 5th district, but we expect that to change because with the recent funding of the Blue River Trail that will go from Stadium Drive all the way down to the Kansas City Zoo, folks will have an opportunity there. Next steps. We'd like to meet with each of you, find out what interest you have, if this is still a policy goal, what sort of projects that you're hearing from your constituents that we should be focusing our attention to. We also need to update the plan to include neighborhood connections now that we've got some of our mainline facilities on through our area plan updates. We kind of will give you an update on missing corridors. There's a couple of projects, the trolley track trail at Waldo. There's a big gap there, but we have secured some funding for that. So we'll give you an update on some of those missing corridors and gaps, and then also what we might need to do to finish some of those. We also need to update the on-street bike plan to integrate the trails plan because you can't cover everywhere with the trail and you can't cover everywhere with the bike lane. So the two of them need to work together. We also want to update that 5-year prioritization so that when we go to the Mid-America Regional Council and look for federal grants, we have an idea of what we should be working on. And then report back to the council as a whole with an area plan, or with a trails plan update that would go through the City Planning Commission and the entire public engagement process. So I guess with that, what we're doing again is just kind of looking for policy guidance of where we need to be going over the next 5 years since we did do the trail in 2008 and it's been 8 years later. I don't know, Richard, if I missed anything.
No, the only thing I would say is that council's been very supportive in giving us the match funds to go after these grants that are administered through Mark. And this last 2 rounds, we were able to secure a lot of grants where we have the federal portion, but we are lacking some of the local match. And we are kind of looking for some additional commitment to at least fund the projects that we have grants for right now.
And lastly, in summary, again, I believe in this for a couple of reasons. First off, it's a lot easier to build a trail than to try to build a road or stormwater project. Second of all, there is a federal pot of money that we are able to leverage our local funds. And then third of all, I do think that having this amenity from an economic development standpoint, when compared to some of our cities such as Des Moines and Omaha, which have these facilities, and Johnson County, as far as trying to maintain and attract new residents for our area. So I want to thank you for the update. We tried to go through that pretty quick, and be happy to answer any questions.
Questions, comments? Councilwoman Justice.
Mainly just want to say thank you. This is amazing to see the progress that's happened, and I know that it wouldn't have happened if the two of you hadn't been continuing to push for it, so appreciate it greatly. One of the things that I've been struggling with, I spend a lot of time, my free time trying to find as many trails as possible and to utilize them. And I'll be out there walking or biking, and I'll run into a local or a tourist, and they'll ask if there's any plan for updated maps and more kind of user-friendly tools online. Who should we coordinate that with? Because, I mean, I know it's expensive, and I know that this is a regional thing, so.
We have been working with the Mid-America Regional Council on the emergency location system, but one of the ideas that we haven't really had a chance to update or explore, but we need to now that we're actually getting this system in, is having some sort of QCR or code at trail locations or some website where folks can go for a dynamic map rather than a static map. So we're aware of that. We just have not, it's kind of a regional conversation that would be nice to work out, but we have not done that. But that's one of the things that we'll address in this update.
Okay, that'd be great. Yeah, with Mark in particular, because I've found myself just sitting on the side of a trail with someone from Omaha, and I'm showing them a picture on my phone and this piece of paper that I've printed out, and just kind of piecing it all together. And I think that it would be wonderful.
We'll give a brief. As we were able to do Line Creek, Blue River, and Indian Creek, and map that with the 911 operating system. So if somebody's out on the trail, they are trail markers that have a GPS location on that trail marker where if somebody gets hurt or injured, they can call in, and then the 911 operator would instantly be able to identify where they're at and send emergency crews to that area.
Excellent.
And so we have that on Blue River, Indian Creek, and Line Creek.
Okay. Thank you, Councilwoman Justice. Is there Councilman Fowler?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Couple of things just for update purposes, and I know we just opened a trail connection at 152 like 2 or 3 weeks ago. And how far is that whole connection up there? Do you have an idea as to what?
The best analogy I use is if you want to go and gamble either with your kids at Chuck E. Cheese or at the Argosy Casino in Riverside, it is 11 miles by bicycle. So however you choose to entertain yourself with games, it is 11 miles. But we have 11 miles total from the river up to the Zona Rosa area.
And then it's going to go back to the east, then over, and it will eventually connect with Costco in that area. Is that correct?
Yes.
What role in that area have TIFs played? I know that I'm speaking both of KCI Quarter TIF and Shoal Creek, and then the Plat Purchase Redevelopment. Is there funding through the TIFs for some of this?
Yes, most of the 150, in fact, I want to say 100% of the 152 trail is being matched by TIF funds, and part of the reason why is both the city and Platte County have a parks and stormwater sales tax, so we're using those taxes as intended through the TIF process to leverage those federal funds.
And then what kind of time frame are we talking about to get to that distance to the east over to 169?
We have some funding where we've got a few segments that we'll be building in 2017 and 18, but it probably won't be until 2020 where we have everything all the way across over to Maple Woods Community College.
Okay. Oh, so that will connect to Maple Woods?
Yes.
And south of the river, kind of at Councilwoman Justice's invitation, I went bike riding on the Indian Creek Trail, and I noticed it went quite a ways over into Kansas, but didn't go that far into Missouri. What is And I'll be honest with you, just because of the train, I didn't like the Kansas route very much. There were some steep spots that were getting to me. What is the time frame for getting that farther to the east?
On the piece connecting over to the trolley track trail, is that what you're asking about?
Yeah, well, it seemed like only went half a mile.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering how
Indian
much farther
Creek
we can get when.
is about, it's roughly 3 miles long from state line to the confluence of the Blue River, and it's another 3 miles along the Blue River to Minor Park. And so we have close to about 6.8 to 7 miles on the ground. And then the next piece that's funded through the trolley track trail is it's probably another mile, and then we'll be missing one critical segment to make that trolley track connection. And then also we have the funding for the first piece of a Swope Park Trail that will connect to the Blue River Trail that was recently completed south of 63rd Street to Blue Parkway. So we got some critical links that are in the works.
Yeah, the Blue River Trail, we're building, and we're going to meet at the zoo, and we still have to figure out how to get around the zoo. But Richard, in this last funding round, I want to secured about $1.5 million of additional federal money to start building north and south off of Indian Creek. So,
All right, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Fowler, and I look forward to finding out from Mr. Minder where he spent more of his time. Was it at Argosy or at Chuck E. Cheese? We'll find that out later, though.
If I may make an editorial comment, Chuck E. Cheese is probably cheaper, but Argosy, the food's probably better.
Okay, well, I'll leave it at that.
For an
How
adult
about
taste.
other comments or questions from council? Oh, Councilwoman Hall.
I just want to say thank you for all the finagling you've done through the different funding mechanisms that you're able to secure. I think Kansas City would have less miles of trails and connectivity through all of our county partnerships and our local municipalities that we work with if you hadn't been able to figure out how to make all this work. So I thank you for that. And I think it does make our city overall healthier because we're having options where we're getting our families out and about and walking and being healthy. So thank you very much for doing that.
Thank you, Councilwoman Hall.
Also, too, one thing I forgot to mention, I should have mentioned, but the maintenance staff at Parks and Recreation Department has stepped up and taken ownership and maintenance and kept these things looked really good. That was one of our fears when we started, but staff has gone above and beyond what I had expected them doing. So this is a multi-departmental initiative, and it's been very successful, and we look forward to continuing it.
Any other comments or questions? Well, I might just ask, I'm sorry, Councilman Reed.
Thank you. I want to applaud you all for your work, and I appreciate highlighting a number of the trails that are within the 3rd District. One of the things that our PIAC reps have been trying to do over the past several years has been exactly what you've discussed, which has been to make sure that we have the places for people to go in our community. Now, the pictures you have in front of us, though, don't necessarily show, and I know you mentioned, there were people walking, although I don't know if there was something wrong with the lens that you had or so, but...
They wouldn't sign waivers, I think.
I'm sorry?
They wouldn't sign waivers, perhaps.
Maybe, who knows? But just as people are sitting in the audience here and wherever, folks are always snapping pictures without waivers. So regardless of that, do appreciate you all highlighting those. And just even as we, in our meeting last week in Transportation Infrastructure, talked about Swope Park and the new trails right outside of the Heart of America golf course there, and what that will mean for the Swope Park area, which is not in the district that I represent, but just in terms of the entire city, really shows about the trails and the things that we're doing to make our community biker-friendly, walker-friendly, and a number of things. So appreciate the hard work that our city staff is doing. A lot of times we don't get an opportunity to say thank you, and so thank you for the hard work. And this is what it really means to the people who we serve every single day on the front lines to make these things happen. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Reed. Anyone else who wishes to add? I'll let you close in a moment, but just a couple questions I might ask. Obviously, a lot of the dollars and a lot of the success that we've had really has to do with our partners and our ability to leverage those funds. I may ask you a couple editorial-style questions, but I know Wes well enough to know that he doesn't mind an editorial now and again. Some of your own comments and thoughts related to federal and state funds, knowing that we've got a change coming up, and I guess my question related to that is, do we expect some of the programs that we have been successfully able to utilize go away or change dramatically? And then, and it's sort of to an earlier point I think that Councilman Fowler made, I know in Platte County especially, we've been very successful utilizing their parks tax to create some partnership opportunities. And so I guess I'm either asking you to say how wonderful that tax is for those who live in Platte County, but again, I guess the importance related to that leverage source. So if you want to take on those couple of categories, that'd be great.
Yeah, I think as far as the federal bill, we really don't know what's going to happen, but we do know that it doesn't matter which party excuse me, you're a member of in Washington, D.C., everybody seems to like spending money on infrastructure. So the plan, even though we've had changes over time, has generally remained the same. Infrastructure, transportation bill since 1991. And then as far as the county partnerships, you know, we understand that you as PIAC budgets, you guys are very limited and you've got a lot of needs. And so what we try to do is try to keep these matching grant levels down to a fundable amount so it doesn't eat up a lot of your money. And that's why we have been more successful, because we've been able to, at least in Platte County, we've been able to use county funds to match the PIAC dollars plus the federal dollars. And so it's been nice. We also do have a 50-50 partnership with Jackson County on the Little Blue Trace Trail, and we're going to be building about 2 miles of that this upcoming summer, which will expand the network into Kansas City. So having those agreements with those two counties have been very helpful.
Very good. And just one more question on planning, knowing that we started out with a plan from 2008, and it sort of looks like we've got some potential incremental changes based on the area plans and some of those things. Can you talk a little bit about what plans, if any, for really looking at that entire plan, that entire system, knowing that we've had growth in some areas, well, especially growth in some areas, how that may change our overall citywide plan related to trails?
I think the key is we'd like to start getting a little closer. Now that we've got the networks in, we'd like to have those neighborhood connections so that if somebody comes in with a development plan, rather than doing a trail that just goes around in a circle within the development, they would actually build a trail that connected to the system. And so that would get their residents connected to the system to get around. And then also to, with some of the changes in the, with the changes in Chapter 88 of the Development Code a few years back, there may be some stuff that we need to work out between the two as far as parkland dedication requirements as far as building versus not building that. And so it's kind of part of we'll sit down, we'll take your feedback, and we'll work with planning on that. They will be actually starting to do some stuff on the on-street bike network and kind of put them all together and kind of create a working group that's going to look at everything holistically.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Anybody else who has a question or comment? Councilman McManus.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I want to thank Wes and Richard for a great presentation. I should thank really all the staff that have worked on this initiative, and it's been this is a multi-generational really effort. The investments we're trying to make now will help us obviously be a better connected city, a healthier city, and more with more vitality. And appreciate your efforts in helping us continue to move in this direction. And thanks for the opportunity to present this today. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilman McManus, and thank you both very much. Look forward to the follow-up and the next steps.
Okay, thank you.